Okay.
I got hot sauce in my bag, swag.
A quick shout out to Mr. Sonic Fan 12. This is a fan art that he drew for me. Looks pretty rad. Metal Duckles is looking pretty badass over here, so thank you so much for this. I really appreciate it. I can tell you put a lot of heart and soul into this, so love it so much. Hey there, beautiful human. My name's RidersDX, and welcome to my channel, where today we're doing something a little bit different. And so what's gonna happen is that I'm gonna be playing this game, the Munchables. And you might be wondering, this isn't Sonic, SpongeBob, or Crash related, Riders. What are you doing? And I have a simple explanation. See, a while back I ran this contest to have people guess what my video was, which was a Sonic Forces remake. And the person that won that contest was Goomba. By the way, they wanted me to plug in their YouTube channel, so I have a link to his YouTube channel in the top right corner, but also in the description box below. Definitely check him out if you want to support like a small YouTuber. He's got a lot of promise. But he requested that I make a video on this game. And I thought, you know, I was kind of interested in starting a review series. So I'm like, yeah, let's go ahead and just review this game and just see what it's all about. Now, I've never played this game before. I have no idea what this is. I've never even heard of it until he requested it from me. So I just ordered it off of Amazon, and I guess we got some kind of like porcupine thing in the front or something like that. And I don't know, it says here, only the Munchables can munch, crunch, and lunch their way through the evil space pirates and save the world from total destruction. And so I guess it's a very food heavy game. I don't know. I have no idea. And so we're just gonna put this into the Wii and see what happens. So yeah, this is all you're gonna see from me right now. I'm gonna see you all again in a couple weeks when I have finally finished the game and have a full-on review on what I think about it. And so yeah, we'll see how this goes. No one's probably gonna watch this video since it's not Sonic, SpongeBob, or Crash related, but if you're watching this, MVP. All right, let's see you then. Alright, so I've gotten to play the Munchables for about a couple weeks now, and I've completed the game and everything, and man, I've gotta say, it's a very interesting game. I don't even know where to start with this game, so I think I'm just gonna kind of summarize the game a little bit first, and then we can kind of go from there. And so when you start the game, you are immediately met with like the tone of this game, where you can hear the Munchables shout, "Let's eat!" When you start the game, you get this opening cinematic that basically maps out what the plot of the game is, and it does a really good job of just showcasing what the overall tone and style of this game is. And so you get these really wacky characters showing up on screen. It's got a really interesting animation style, and the colors just pop up everywhere. It really does a good job of showing off just what this game is about, and it basically was a perfect introduction. This game is very childish, it's very kiddie, it's very quirky, it's got some weird adult humor kind of sprinkled into it, and so it's a lot to take in. So let's kind of go over the story. The story is basically about these creatures called the Munchables that live in a place called Starving. Get it? Starving? Yeah, that's what I mean by like the really weird humor in this game, led by the Great Elder. Starving is made up of 7 islands, with each one housing a legendary orb that ensures the Munchables have an adequate food supply. One day, UFOs come and invade the islands, and they start stealing the legendary orbs and just ensuing destruction everywhere they go. And the creatures that came from these UFOs are called Tabamon monsters, or more often than not, space pirates. That's way easier than whatever Tabamon monsters is pronounced. No, these monsters, however, look like various foods, which the 2 main Munchables that you can play in the game find to look very tasty. And so these Munchables are named Chomper and Munchie, and there's really not too many differences between them in terms of personality. They're more so just like options for you to play as, because I guess the developers were not okay with just having one playable character. They wanted to add like a little bit more variety, so they have slightly different traits to them that make them play a little bit differently. But for the most part, you're getting the same game experience of either one, so it really is all about preference. But that's basically the whole bottom line in terms of the storyline, and it's pretty simplistic, but it gets the job done. You know, just kind of based off of the tone of this game and the visual style, I was not surprised at all that the story is not that complicated, and quite frankly, it's what I expected. So I'm not really disappointed by the story. It pretty much just gets the job done and lays out a foundation of why it is you're here, like eating a whole bunch of crap like all around the 7 islands. You know, it makes sense, and it basically establishes the background for this game. Now, in terms of the overall presentation of this game, like I mentioned before, it's very colorful and it pops up at you, and I gotta say, like, I think they do a very good job of sticking to one theme. Like, it is one thing about a game that kind of turns me off is that it's a game that like tries to tackle different ideas and make them all come together at the same time and really not do a very good job at it. This game knows what kind of game it is and sticks to it, and I think that's a really good strength, and you'd be surprised at how many games actually struggle with that. But I will say that like the presentation can be a little bit cringe at times. Like, it kind of just gets a little bit too sweet and too like childish for me, to the point where it does get a little bit nauseating. I mean, I understand why it looks like that. I know that that's the audience that this game is aiming for, but the bright colors can sometimes get a little bit nauseating, especially with like the Wii system's graphics, where it's not the sharpest like graphics powerhouse as like other systems are, but it still gets the job done. And overall, it's a pretty like nice theme for this game, and I really have no other complaints for it. Actually, if there's something that really popped up at me immediately, is that the look and sound in this game reminded me a lot of Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz. I mean, that was one of the games that I played a lot of when I was a kid, and that was also a really colorful, bright and shining game, and it was a little bit much for me even as a kid. But this game reminded me a lot of that game in terms of the music and the graphics. Plus, the Munchables are also like literal balls, so I guess that's another thing that made me associate them with Super Monkey Ball. I know it's not like the same thing, but practically is. I will say though, the music in this game is absolutely amazing. The music is very high energy and it's very fast paced, and it really fits like the gameplay of this game, which I'll talk a little bit more about later on in the review. But the music is very fast paced and very hyper, and I really think it fits the concept of being this like puffball that slowly turns into Godzilla eating everything that's around them, and it really just puts a lot of energy behind the gameplay, and that was really important. Like, it would have been really weird if this game had like elevator music playing behind it, because that's just not the kind of game it is. It's a very fast-paced game, lots of things happen very quickly and you gotta react fast, and the music really suits it. And it's also very diverse in terms of genres. I mean, the very first track is very poppy, very like happy, pops up at you, but when you get to the final boss track, that track sounds like something that came straight out like a Sonic Adventure game. Like, there's so much diversity in the soundtrack, it's crazy. But overall, every track really fits like the level that it's attached to. And you know, there are some tracks here and there that are kind of like misses, but for the most part, it's a pretty solid soundtrack. And I gotta say, some of my favorite tracks is, well, the first track you hear in the first level, and also the last track in the final boss, and I guess those are my two favorite tracks. There's no other tracks that really pop up in my brain right now as like instant favorites. Now, in terms of the look of this game, I want to kind of go back to it and put your attention on the enemies in particular. Like, this is a very interesting detail about the game, is that most of the space pirates are modeled after fruits and vegetables. And so I kind of found this a little bit amusing, because it kind of shows me that the developers were thinking very much of like, oh, we don't want to be a bad influence on kids and make all our space pirates like sweets, chips, chocolate, candy, and all that. And so let's make sure that the enemies that you're eating are like vegetables and fruits, and 90% of the enemies in this game are fruits and vegetables. So I just found that to be very interesting. Like, there's broccoli, carrots, onions, a whole bunch of other vegetables that I could name, but it's very interesting that they took that direction. I guess they could have gone a lot lot of flack otherwise from parents if they made all the food like really sweet and junky like foods. Although I will say there is one level in the game that is a very sweet themed level. So, you know, think about like Sweet Mountain from Sonic Colors. It's like that, only like 10 times worse, you know? It's got so many more like different chocolates and all that all around the level. It literally gave me a toothache just like looking at it. And this is probably one of the examples of like a level that was just like too much for me. Like it just looked way too sweet and way too childish. Like it literally made me feel sick. But it's a pretty entertaining level otherwise. Now there's one thing about this game that I want to touch upon before I get into the gameplay that I did mention before, and that's that there are some adult jokes and references that are sprinkled throughout this game, and they're not like really inappropriate things, but they are things that are like, oh, I'm not really sure like how appealing this would be to like a kid. But a couple examples of some of the jokes in this game that like I picked up on was that the legendary orbs, they look like poop. They look like I guess like this was made around the time that the poop emoji was very popular, so that might be one thing. And also, the Munchables at the end of each level, when you're seeing the result with the Great Elder, they basically poop out all the orbs that they had, and the orbs come from the space pirates that they eat, so they're essentially like pooping and covering the Great Elder in their feces. Sounds really ridiculous like saying it out loud like that, but it's orbs, so it's fine. One last thing is that in the menu there's a toilet that's an option, and the toilet basically is just showing off your results for each level, so it's kind of like showing off like how much you pooped in each level. And so those are just some examples of like the really weird humor in this game that's like underlying all the really childish and obvious stuff that's like in your face. And I guess it's amusing. I don't really like love it, but I don't really hate it either. Like I'm pretty neutral on the jokes. I don't know what else to say about them. I mean, if you like bathroom jokes, then this will be great. If you don't, then you won't like it at all. I guess maybe I just don't like bathroom jokes. That's probably why it is I'm not like too impressed with the jokes overall, but I will give them credit for like trying to inject some more interesting quirky humor into the game compared to most other games. And so in terms of the gameplay, it's described as a free-roaming 3D platformer, but it honestly feels very different from most other platformers. You see, the gameplay is very fast-paced, and the goal is to basically eat as many of the space pirates as you can find in each level. And you start off being this like really tiny little puff ball, you know, kind of like a cotton candy like ball, I guess. And then as you keep eating more and more pirates, you get bigger and bigger and bigger, and the bigger you get, the bigger the pirates you can eat, and it just is kind of this like never-ending cycle of like eating more and more bigger enemies and getting bigger and bigger until like the game stops you. But as you get bigger, the gameplay gets a lot more exciting and a lot more interesting, because it's like, ooh, I'm getting so big in size now, I can eat more and more enemies. And when I first started playing this game, it was sort of like a bit of an adrenaline rush in a way, that like the bigger I got, the more excited I got, because it's like, ha, I'm big and strong now, and I no longer have to worry about like getting attacked by you. Like I can actually just eat you in one scoop and you're done. And so I gotta say that kind of gameplay like mechanic was very satisfying to me, and once I started playing it, like I surprisingly found this to be really fun, and I was pretty into the game and I wanted to keep playing it for like a good like couple days or so. It basically reminds me of like if I was Kirby, except that like if I retained everything I ate. Now, if there's one thing that's very interesting though, is that we are the good guys, but we're basically eating everything that's like moving in the game, and so it's like, I guess we're the good guys in the sense that like we are terrorizing like bad people. It's very interesting to kind of like play this game and just see like how massive you get and how many like space pirates you end up eating in each level. It's a very simple concept, yet it's very original, and I personally have not played a video game like this, and I can't think of a game that plays like this. I mean, if there is a game that does play like this, then let me know in the comment section below, and so I can check it out and see like how many similarities there are between this game and that game. But as of recording this video, I really don't know if there's any other game that's like this, and if there isn't, then that's mighty impressive, because this is a pretty original concept. In terms of the controls, now this is a Wii title, controls. So there's obviously motion controls that you can use, it might be subject to. However, this game does have multiple controller options, like you could play with a classic controller, you could also play with a GameCube controller. I chose to go with the classic controller and not even touch the motion controllers, and so I have no idea what the motion controls are, but I'm pretty sure they're shoehorned in or something like that, because playing this game, like, it really didn't feel like motion controls were necessary. Like, I played with the classic controller and it played perfectly fine, and there was no like strong need to have like that motion component into it, and so I think the motion controls are probably just like very basic from what I'm assuming, but I don't know for sure. And so if you played this game before and you know what the motion controls are like, then let me know that in the comment section below. But playing the classic controller was very nice and very easy, you know, have no complaints whatsoever. Like, you aren't able to turn the camera, but there really is no need to do that in a game like this, and so yeah, the game played perfectly fine for the most part. I will say that, like I did mention before, that when I first started getting into the gameplay, it was very exciting for me and I was enjoying it a lot. It was a lot of fun, like devouring everything in sight and getting bigger and bigger. But as I started getting into the game, the levels kind of had like a little like less variance, like there wasn't as much being introduced into each level to make it more interesting, and so the gameplay got a little bit tiring as I kept going through the game. However, there was one level in this game that I found to be very fresh, and I wish there was kind of like more levels like this, or that this like level type was expanded upon more, and that was the first level of the Haunted Mansion Island. And so this was an interesting concept, because in most of the levels that I played beforehand, they were in very wide open environments, and I was basically just going around these big areas and eating as many of the space pirates as I can. But in this one, you're put in a more closed off environment, and it's like a maze where there's a bunch of different doors you can go to, but to kind of go through all the doors, you need to get all the keys for the specific doors. And so it was also like a treasure hunt, because I had to go looking for like, okay, where can I find this key to unlock this door to like get there so I could eat those space pirates, because you know, it wasn't as simple as like walking around in the big open area until you find a space pirate. You had to actually like really dig around and try to find what you were looking for. And I found this to be really interesting and a really great example of how they were able to keep the gameplay fresh sometimes by changing up the level design, and this is definitely like my favorite example of them doing that. They've definitely done that in like other levels, but I just didn't feel like it was as effective as it was in this one. And it's really a shame that this was the only like level that had mechanics like this. I think this should have been expanded upon even more, at least in the second Haunted Mansion level, but instead in the second Haunted Mansion level, you move outside and you just play in a more open area just like all the other levels. And so yeah, that was just one example of a really good level that was able to like add some twists into the gameplay and make a new experience for you. I really wish there were more unique ideas like this. I think the closest that they came to doing that was like having that level in the skies where you were able to change the weather, but this feature was so like minor and just did not impact the game that much beyond like opening up a new path for you to go to that you had to go to like activate some kind of switch. It really didn't introduce that many new ideas, whereas the Haunted Mansion level introduced so many new ideas and like almost a different mindset of how to play this game. Now, there are also some levels that I did not enjoy, and one of the levels that I really did not enjoy was the one that took place in the ocean, and this is because the Munchables move so slow in these levels. It's like agonizing, like trying to maneuver these levels after playing 2 levels beforehand where the Munchables moved at a pretty decent pace throughout the level. Having to move at like a snail's pace in this level was just like not fun at all. And the same went for the boss as well, because you know, you had to kind of move around to defeat the boss here, and moving around in this water is just so ineffective and so boring. Like, I don't know why they had to make the Munchables move slow. I mean, they are basically floating in the air, so why did they have to move slow in water? Like, I don't know. It's a really confusing design choice, and it just made that level like really annoying in terms of like maneuvering it. Now, one level that I really disliked though was the second to last level, and so without spoiling what happened in the game storyline that kind of led you up to this point, you basically had to fight every single boss that you encountered beforehand in one level. And it's not like these bosses are harder or changed at all. They're basically the exact same bosses. So okay, so before I kind of go further into this level, there are also bosses in this game, and the bosses are with each island that you go to. So there's 7 islands, and each island has a boss pirate, and so you battle that boss. Like, each boss has a slightly different strategy in terms of how to defeat them, and so you take onto that strategy and you defeat the boss, then you move on to the next island. Simple as that. In this second to last level, you fight against every single boss you came in contact with throughout this whole game, and I'm just like, this is one of the laziest last levels I've ever played in a game, because it basically takes 7 things that you encountered throughout the game and just copy and pastes them into the last level. Like, they're not changed at all. You basically are fighting the same thing, and so they feel easier because you already know the strategy, you know how to defeat them, and their health bars I think are a little bit lower too, just so like the level doesn't take like ages. But last levels are supposed to be like these really intense, like difficult levels that test everything you learned in the game beforehand, but instead what they did for this last level is just copy and paste things that you did beforehand in the game and just make that the last level. And I think that's just like one of the laziest examples of a last level I've ever seen, and so the game definitely takes a lot of points off for that. Like, I just think that that's just such a dumb thing to do. But shifting gears, overall the gameplay is very fun, and I found it to be very refreshing in my gameplay library compared to other games I played. Like, if I'm being honest, I don't know if this is a gameplay style I would come back to. Like, I didn't love it so much that I want to play it over and over again like I would with like a Sonic game, but nonetheless, it was a pretty fun experience and I enjoyed it. So this game is described as a platformer, but it's a very, very weird kind of platformer. Like, I've never played anything like this before. It almost felt like an arcade platformer, which doesn't make much sense to me. You know, at least someone who's grown up in games during this day and age. But maybe there was a little bit more common back when like games were not as huge and not these like grand adventures, you know, like Super Mario Odyssey or like Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. This game really gets straight to the point. You know, there's like these short levels that you play through, you try to complete as fast as you can, and you get ranked at the end of the level. And so there's actually a lot of correlations between this game and Sonic games in my opinion. I mean, a lot of music is kind of similar, and of course you got the ranking system and just like the whole structure of how the game is portrayed. But overall, like, I guess I had like no expectations going to the game, and so I thoroughly enjoyed myself. It was a pretty solid run for the most part. If anything, it's a nice way to spend a weekend. I kind of doubt I'm gonna go back to this game, you know? I mean, I like the gameplay, but I didn't love it. I guess it just isn't for me, but I had fun with it while I did, and I'm glad I got to experience it. So thank you so much to Goomba for giving me the opportunity to play this game. I really appreciated it, and it was interesting playing something a little bit different from the games I usually cover on this channel. So it was lots of fun. But yeah, if this is something y'all found interesting and y'all have other games you want me to cover that are kind of like out there, then let me know in the comment section below, and who knows, if I have an interest in it, then you might see it get covered, you know, maybe not, I don't know. Anyway, thank you so much for this, and yeah, I guess that's everything. Alright everyone, please give this video a thumbs up if you like it, subscribe to my channel below if you like videos like these, want to see more in the future, follow me on Twitter or Twitch, and join my Discord server, the Spongy Garden. Now this is Riders, riding out. A quick shout out to my special duckies, Reese Gaming and Sodden Grider. If you would like to become a ducky, then please check out either my YouTube membership or my Patreon in the description box below. Thank you.